Time is something we live our lives by. We want more of it, but then we waste it. We wish we could go back, rewind it, and live it over again. We want to know how it works and
tinker with the idea of moving forward and backwards upon it, and we want to control it. Time orients us, so when we lose it, we're left with this jarring, blank space in our memory. Those missing minutes, hours, days can haunt us, but time isn't the most precious thing that can slip between our fingers and disappear forever.
Across the world, thousands of people go missing every day, and in 1961, a housewife and mother of two from the suburbs of Lincoln, Massachusetts, was one of those people.
30-year-old Joan Risch goes missing under extremely strange and mysterious circumstances. Her case has never been solved, and she has never been found. But maybe that's the way she wanted it. Today on Dark Matters, the disappearance of Joan Risch.
To say Joan Risch's disappearance was strange is kind of an understatement. Delving into her case is like peeling back the skin of an onion, each layer a little more rotten the closer to the core you get. So to truly understand the twists and turns, we first need to answer the question, who was Joan Risch?
She was born in Brooklyn, New York as Joan Natress on August 4th, 1931, and was orphaned early in her life when her parents died in a suspicious house fire in 1940. Tragedy didn't seem to hold Joan back, though. She graduated with an English degree in 1952 and pursued work with a publishing company in New York, which was unsurprising to anyone who knew her, as she was always reading and writing in her free time. She then met and fell for Martin Risch, the executive director of a paper company out of Fitchburg, Massachusetts. They married, had 2 children, Lillian and David, and settled in Lincoln, Massachusetts, where Joan was a stay-at-home mom but remained active in her local League of Women Voters group.
So what exactly went wrong? Joan had a happy marriage, no enemies, and was known for being a loving and devoted mother who would have done anything to protect her children. Keep all of that in mind as we dive into the circumstances surrounding Joan's last known day, and you'll understand why it's beyond strange. October 24th, 1961 is the last day Joan Risch is seen alive, and it starts off normal, but quickly descends into a series of events that have baffled investigators for over 50 years.
At 6:50 a.m., Martin Risch departs from the family house on Bedford Street for Boston for an 8 a.m. flight to New York for business. From approximately 7 a.m. to 10:15 a.m., Joan makes breakfast for the children, tidies up, and takes her 2-year-old son David over to her neighbor, Barbara Barker's house, while she and 4-year-old Lillian go to the dentist. Joan has a cavity filled and makes another appointment for the 31st for additional work. After, Joan goes out, buys a gift for her husband and a bra for herself, and arrives home around 11 a.m. to find both her milk and mail have been delivered, but she doesn't see the milkman or the postman. She then picks up David from the neighbor and returns home, where inside she is met by W.F. Colburn, a driver for a dry cleaning service the Risches frequently used. He picks up 2 of Mr. Risch's business suits and has a short, normal conversation with Joan before leaving. Colburn later mentioned it was completely normal for Joan to leave her front door unlocked.
So from about 11:30 to 1:50 p.m., the schedule runs like clockwork. Joan cooks lunch, puts David upstairs in his crib for a nap, and does the dishes while Lillian plays outside in the driveway with the neighbor's child, Douglas Barker. She then did some landscaping before returning inside. So here's where things deviate from the routine.
At 1:55 p.m., Joan walks down the 60-foot driveway with both Douglas and Lillian. She walks them over to the Barker's house and drops the kids off at the swing set without telling Barbara. She tells Lillian, "I'll be back," before heading back to her home alone. About 20 minutes later, Barbara Barker sees a glimpse of Joan running from her car parked outside towards the garage, and she's carrying something red in her arms. Large trees block Barbara from seeing anything further.
After 2:15 p.m., the rest of Joan's day, or life for that matter, becomes solely speculation based on evidence, eyewitness testimonies, and investigation. There was a little over an hour of time where no one sees anything out of the ordinary at the Risch residence. However, around 2:45 p.m.
on Route 2A near the Risch residence, a witness spots a woman matching Joan's description wandering aimlessly along the side of the road, looking untidy. She was also hunching as if cold, but wearing a coat. The temperature was 52 degrees Fahrenheit at the time, and the witness also noticed a two-toned gray and blue sedan parked along Route 2A.
Then at 3:20 p.m., a neighbor's daughter sees a dirty, two-toned gray and light blue sedan parked behind Joan's car in the Risch's driveway while walking home from school. A neighbor previously saw the same car in the drive 5 days earlier.
At 3:40 p.m., Barbara walks Joan's daughter Lillian back to the driveway where she sees Joan's car, but no other vehicle. Thinking Joan is home, Barbara leaves Lillian all alone and goes into town to run errands.
From 3:15 to approximately 4:25, there are various witnesses driving along Route 120A off of Route 2A who spot a woman, again matching Joan's description, walking close to a road construction site. She seems in a daze with her head downcast and appears to be cradling something against her abdomen.
And there's blood running down the back and front of both of her legs. Despite this, no one stopped to help the woman, and sightings of her stopped after this point.
Now back on Bedford Street at 4:15, Barbara arrives back home from shopping to find Lillian in her yard, confused and scared. So Lillian tells Barbara, "I can't find Mommy, and there's red paint on the kitchen walls."
Sensing something off, Barbara goes to the Risch residence alone and finds the red paint isn't paint at all, but blood smeared on the walls and floor, and it's not just in the kitchen. It trails up the stairs to the second floor and to the master bedroom where David, in his crib, is crying. Barbara doesn't waste any more time on the house. She grabs David and returns home to call the police.
Police arrive shortly after 4:30 p.m., anticipating a suicide, therefore a body, but there's no sign of Joan in the house or anywhere on the property. And authorities are left to follow the trail of blood, from the kitchen, up the stairs to the master, back down the stairs,
out to the front drive where they find it smeared on the hood and trunk of Joan's car before it suddenly disappears. They also found the kitchen phone receiver ripped from the wall and carefully placed in the trash bin, which had been relocated from the corner of the room to the center. The telephone book was found near the phone, open to the emergency numbers page, and keep in mind, this is before 911 was implemented. Nothing had been stolen, so police speculated she'd experienced some sort of medical emergency, an accidental injury or hemorrhage, and tried to seek help.
The problem with that theory, though, is in the blood smeared on the kitchen wall. They found a partial thumbprint and palm print, neither of which belonged to Joan. And after hearing witness testimonies, the police changed the course of their investigation. They now believed they were dealing with foul play. So the investigation begins first with a search for Joan.
As the hours pass, 50 police officers, some military personnel, and even off-duty FBI agents scoured the Massachusetts woods, searched in waterways and ponds, and flew helicopters over the area. An extensive search that turned up no signs of Joan Risch. Mr. Risch, upon being notified, immediately flew back home, understandably shocked by what the authorities were telling him. The children were fine, but his wife had possibly been kidnapped, a victim of foul play. But as the day passed, there was still no trace of Joan, so police were forced to focus on the crime scene. The partial prints were compared to Joan's medical records, and there was no match. The blood, on the other hand, was hers, type O. Police estimated that there was at least a pint throughout the house, and oddly enough, no footprints in the blood trail. So either they got lucky enough not to step in the blood, or they were meticulous. And someone had clearly tried to clean up the blood in the kitchen using paper towels and a garment. Then there was the question of the trail. Did it start from the drive and end in the kitchen, or vice versa? Police felt the trail ended outside, where she'd possibly been forced into a car by someone, but investigators still had more questions than answers. Whose prints were on the wall, and most important, where was Joan, and what had happened to her?
Police painstakingly weed through a list of possible suspects, knowing that they are losing time.
Martin Risch was cleared of any involvement, having a solid alibi and claiming he and Joan had a happy marriage, a fact backed up by family and friends. The dry cleaner Colburn was also cleared.
Then came a possible lead with a man named Robert Foster, who worked for the National Park Service and had recently been tasked with acquiring residential properties to be absorbed into
a new national reserve known as the Minuteman National Historical Park.
Foster spoke with Joan on September 25th about the value of her home and also spoke to some of the neighbors, several of which felt he had overstayed his welcome. Joan knew of the national park as it was a topic of discussion at her League of Women's Voters. However, Foster had an alibi confirmed by a coworker, and it was questioned no further. Then police tried to identify the mysterious car and found a lead to a Harold Munder, an outpatient from a hospital in Bedford. He was seen by witnesses at 4:15 exiting his car, a two-tone sedan, along Route 2A, where he walked to the woods, cut branches from a tree, then took the branches back to his car before driving away. I know, strange. About 6 hours later, a cab company calls the authorities to report Harold, who is acting suspicious, while sending a telegram to his brother. But Harold was cleared of any involvement, despite the fact his car matched the description of the one seen in various locations where Joan was also seen. It's possibly a coincidence, possibly two different unrelated cars. No one who saw the car knew the owner of the car, so a vehicle that ultimately leads us nowhere.
Joan was presumed in good health that day, physically and mentally, and police were completely stumped. 2 years passed before there was any new information at all, but the new info didn't lend any answers. It only added another layer to the case's labyrinth.
Local editor Serene Gerson uncovers Joan's library records and found that 1 year prior to her disappearance, in the summer of 1960, she checked out 25 books, all titles centered around either murder or unexplained, unsolved disappearances.
The subjects of these books included the following: an orphan girl vanishing, a man staging his own disappearance, a wife vanishing without a trace, a schoolboy who vanished purposefully, and a woman leaving her life to begin anew. Her husband found nothing odd about this, though, and said that she simply loved a good suspense story. But the press didn't see it that way, and they spread the story like wildfire, sparking new theories concerning Joan's sudden vanishing.
Even 50 years later, there are so many questions about this case, and just as many theories to match. Some are simple, some are complex, but all of them are disturbing in their own way. First theory: Joan was kidnapped, there was a struggle, she was forced into a car by unknown persons for unknown reasons, and was never seen again. It explains why the blood trail ended at the end of the driveway and the car, but not much else. So, second possibility.
Joan was assaulted, but she was able to escape her attacker, at least briefly. She received an injury from the altercation, which resulted in amnesia or confusion, which would explain the woman matching Joan's description walking along Route 2A and 128, looking dazed, with blood running down her legs. No one reported her being followed, but no one stopped to help either. It is possible her attacker drove off, but happened upon her again along the side of the road and pulled over to finish the job, or intentionally sought her out. But we don't know why or who in this scenario, since there's no confirmed suspect.
A third theory: Joan suffered some sort of self-inflicted injury, accidental or intentional, or a medical emergency like hemorrhaging. And as she lost blood, she became disoriented and wandered away seeking help, where she was seen walking along the side of the road before disappearing. Along the same lines, some think she suffered a mental break, even though she had no history of mental illness. But this theory doesn't explain the unidentified bloody prints on the walls or the trail ending at the driveway. It was possible she'd stemmed the bleeding by then, though. She was obviously able to walk some distance away from home. Fourth theory is where it starts to get strange.
The New England Untold Stories group investigated the case and extensively interviewed those involved, and concluded Joan was murdered. But by who? They believe it was someone either in connection with or by William Barker, the husband of neighbor Barbara Barker. Though the society didn't state a motive, they believe Joan was killed and buried in a vacant lot in Lexington that was owned by the Barkers. Just a month after Joan's disappearance, the Barkers made plans to build on the lot, which, to my knowledge, has never been excavated.
But William wasn't mentioned in any other source that I found, so take that as you will. Theory number 5, even stranger, is based purely on speculation.
Joan was pregnant, unbeknownst to her husband, but didn't want a third child, so she arranged for a doctor to perform an abortion in the privacy of her home.
Now, at this time, abortion was illegal and extremely dangerous for the mother, but it was still carried out in secret. Should things go wrong during the procedure and the mother die on the table, the abortionist's best option was probably to dispose of the body because A, they've killed someone performing an illegal service, and B, they will not only ruin their reputation, but face legal action and lose their medical accreditations. And again, they just killed someone. Some theorize this is what happened.
During the procedure, something goes wrong. Joan is injured, and in a panic, she reaches for the emergency numbers, but the abortionist, fearing the consequences, rips the phone out of the wall and flees the property, or forces Joan into the car and drops her off on the side of the road. It explains the unidentified palm print on the wall and the unidentified car in the driveway. And curiously, a method of abortion used by some was by wire coat hanger, and police found a wire coat hanger atop Joan's car while investigating. Or was the coat hanger left behind by Colburn, the dry cleaner, a coincidental accident?
But Martin Risch insisted that Joan wouldn't have been upset about a new child, and witness testimony of Joan's love for her children works against this theory. So we have theory number 6, which is loosely tied to 5. Joan was pregnant, but unaware and started having a miscarriage. She panics, tries to call for help, but loses too much blood. But whose prints are on the wall, and whose car was in the driveway? This theory involves no second person, and I think we're looking at 2 people. Theory number 7.
Joan was unhappy and unfulfilled with her life as a stay-at-home mom and wanted a new beginning. Back then, you had to have actual proof of abuse or infidelity to obtain a divorce, so she instead researches disappearances and extensively plans her own, staging the crime scene in order to throw off authorities. If this is the case, she succeeded, as she's never been seen again, living or not.
So then we have theory 8. While Joan was at the dentist, an intruder enters the home through her unlocked front door, which again, she often kept that way. Whatever their intention, they were upstairs when Joan arrived back home.
Realizing the only exit was through the garage or out the front door, the intruder instead hid upstairs and remained there while Joan went about her day. While outside with Lillian and Douglas, Joan saw someone move in the window, or perhaps just sensed that her son wasn't alone in the house. Being cautious, she walks Lillian and Douglas to safety at the Barker's house without saying anything to Barbara, tells Lillian she'll be back, and returns home to do a thorough search.
The intruder, meanwhile, sees Joan leave, sees his chance to escape, but is met with Joan in the kitchen. A struggle happens, the intruder flees, and Joan gets away, or is kidnapped and somehow ends up along the side of the road. But if this is the case, who was the intruder? Whose car was in the driveway? It couldn't have been theirs, as it wasn't present when Joan returned home. Could they have returned in their car in an attempt to clean up? Still, lots of questions with each of these theories. So, second question we have to look at. If Joan was murdered, where is her body?
Those on the assault theory think her killer hid her remains very well. Others think she wandered into the construction pit along Route 128 and was accidentally buried by the crew under dirt and debris. If dead, no matter where Joan is, we certainly don't know. If Joan is alive, maybe some traumatic injury caused amnesia and even she is unaware of her identity. Or maybe she's just really good at disappearing.
The third question leaves us feeling the most helpless. Why? No matter what happened to Joan Risch, we will probably never be able to answer this question.
Since her disappearance, almost 55 years have passed, and no one is any closer to solving the case. There's been numerous claims over the years from people who say they've seen her, but nothing ever comes to fruition. But we have to remember, for those who knew Joan, and to all of us just as humans, this isn't just a case. Someone loved vanished forever, and the aftermath can't be easy to contend with.
Martin Risch, as the result of the disappearance, became a single father, and while the children seemed happy, he knew they missed their mother. He took living just one day at a time and believed his wife was alive somewhere, and always kept the same home phone number no matter where he moved, hoping to one day hear her voice on the other end of the line. And unfortunately, Martin never got to realize that dream, as he passed away after a long illness.
But Joan's legacy lives on in her children. Her son David, a self-proclaimed poet and writer, follows in his mother's footsteps and says that he likes to think she's in heaven, and that she's happy.
No matter what you believe or what you speculate, I ask you only for respect in the comments, and if you have any new information on the whereabouts of Joan, please contact the Lincoln Police Department at the number below. They are still accepting tips for her case. Sources and additional reading can be found in the description below, and remember, while these may be dark matters, the darkness always matters.
If you would like to see more videos from me, don't forget to subscribe. Or if you're looking for more discussion on strange or unsolved cases, you can check out some of my other videos, or you can check out the Seriously Strange podcast, where Rob Dyke and myself have creepy discussions on topics kind of similar to this one. So I will see you in the next video, friends. Stay safe, and have a good night.